Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar on cloud protection trend for 2023. So my name is Derek and I'm the Insight System Engineer uh, in Southeast Asia region. So everything we're gonna cover today is based on the cloud protection trend research. And by the way, this research was just published in earlier of November 2022. It's kind of provide a way to help organization today get ready for their cloud production as well as protection strategy for the year of 2023. Well, we gonna share some of the data in today's session, but not all of it due to time limit, right? However, you can go to the vee.am slash CPT23 or just hit that QR code in the left corner to get the full details, right? So in regards to this survey, Veeam has used the third-party firm and they do a detailed survey to find out what IT leaders are looking for various solution scenario. And again, this particular research was done in the fall of 2022, mainly focusing on production and protection, which including IaaS, SaaS, a PaaS and DRaaS, right? And any other services we can squeeze in there as well. So now I think it will be a full fun session to look into those areas on the why and the who and how and what that involved in this. So let's get started with the why. What are the challenges that are driving the strategies that we seen document in 2022 and moving into to 2023 and beyond? Well, this is an interesting chart, right? So in fact, if you follow the weekly live stream that Veeam does, this is the research pieces that we done over time. Well, this is from the data protection trend report, and that research is kind of our macro study in the 2022 report. It has almost 3,400 organizations from 20 different countries around the world. And one of the questions we ask every year in 2020, 2021, 2022 was what percentage of your production server are physical within your data center? And you see those respond in the left, right? What percentage are virtual machine within data center? And you see those respond in the middle of the screen. And what percentage are cloud hosted workload? Well, you see that on the right hand side, meaning either from the hybrid scale cloud, um, Amazon, Azure, or Google, or or a managed service provider that providing infrastructure services. And over time, we got the result from 21 and year of 2022. In 21, we asked what do you think is gonna be in 2 years later? Well, this gives us 2023, and in 2022 we asked what gonna be in 2 years later. Is give us the 2024. We've related to all that data in, and I think that is two macro thing that kind of come out from this, right? The first one is when you look at the fundamental shape between 2020 and 2021, that survey was done pre-COVID and post-COVID. In the years of 2020 and 2021 data result, and certainly you see that like everything else that happened in the first year of the pandemic, anything that was data center centric was put on hold, whereas anything that you could do in the cloud was significantly accelerated. So you do see a pretty significant jump that happened during the first year. But then after that, everything kind of normalized. So you see there's a nice gradual decline on the physical server, right? That that we see on the left hand side again, and you could attribute that to almost more uh, dilution as organization start consider cloud as an option first. Of course, there is still amount of physical workload remain in the data center, but it's kind of produce a gradual decline statistic over here, right? So technically, in the virtualization space, is showing a pretty even statistic, average around right 23, 25% percentage, and there is a big jump over here as you can see on the cloud space. Well, we presenting this as December 2022. When you look at the cars right over here, 2022 versus 2023, I'm gonna say it is an interesting gap because this is where we go from minority 49% of the servers that been cloud hosted to a majority of 52%. It is an exciting time to be in this space. In conclusion, we can see from the trend of the last 3 years of actual data that organization has aggressively moved to reduce physical servers in their data center, while in 2021 reduce on-premise virtual machine, and organization has been aggressively re-platform servers into the cloud, with 2023 anticipated to be greater than 50%. Cloud hosts VM at 53%. And we can see in 2023 and 2024 that the cloud is forecast to be uptrend. This does not mean that the cloud is any less important or that there is not continuous growth. Rather than the mix of physical and virtual server in the data center as compared to cloud hosted VM is stabilizing. All right, let's take a look on how the journey actually progressing along the way. Well, we're going to focus using that cloud production trend research again. There are two questions that kind of come to everyone's minds. So the workloads going to cloud, or how workloads start up in the cloud? Probably a more accurate way saying that is one of the question in the new research actually asked. Thinking about your production workload brought online within the cloud in last year, what percentage came from each of the following? Right. Interesting to know here is actually two-thirds of the workload spin up in the cloud in 2021 actually were migrated away from the data center, right? And right, they are 37% were migrated from a physical servers, and 33% of them were migrated from a virtualization, right? So, and there are 30% has create new workload in on-premise data center. Well, in general, there are 70% of workload has been migrated or brought online within the cloud in last year. And then here come the second question. Has your organization brought any workload back from the public cloud host to your on-premise? As you can see on the right hand side of this deck, notice that in the gray bar, right? About 20%, about 12% of organizations actually saying no, right? So, and about 40% of organization in a disaster use case has brought workload online back in on-premise environment. Of course, bear in mind this is not permanent, as after the disaster recovery, they will bring staff get back on the cloud again, run as a production. Well, this is a very common use case scenario on nowadays, right? And then we seeing the 43% where the idea is maybe it was more expensive than they thought, or more compute resources needed than what they have expected, or maybe they realize, right, actually some of the special workload might not be more suitable to run in an on-premise environment, right? So, and lastly, on the far right hand side, for many organizations, uh, actually about half, actually 49%, they develop in the cloud, but they always plan on running it on premise along the way. So now we seen the hybrid is here to stay, right? We seen that inflection point along the way, and we talks about where the server are coming from. And by the way, the journey to the cloud is not a one-way trip, right? It's not a one-way trip. Now, one of the survey question was asked in our ransomware survey was, when looking at what kind of data were affected by the ransomware, many organizations might mention, right, remote remote branch office. Why? Because they are more vulnerable, and simply because they are located at the edge of edge, or someone might say a cloud, because they think that cloud is more vulnerable because it is public. And then the other might say it should be the data center, right? Because that's the most people are located in, and human cannot avoid to make mistake, right? That's where phishing started, right? So turns out, in fact, there is no exact answer, right? As no matter where it started, it is progressed across the entire environment. So when you think about hybrid architecture, or we just need to mind off that these stuff are all connected along the way. Next, we look at a change driver in the data protection 2022, right? Which factor would drive your organization to change their primary backup solution to a new solution, or even a services, which is most important, right? As Veeam, one of the thing that we obviously most interested in is, why would you change your primary backup solution, and what is the driving change? And so that was the question asked, right? A lot of this research question, by the way, you notice the long line are chosen to chosen if you notice right from the deck, the long line are chosen or to apply, and the short line is the only chosen the most important along the way. And and when the 2022 research came out, the top two reasons to change an organization primary backup solution are to improve the quality of the backup practice, right? Improve RPO, RTO, SLA, and to improve the reliability, success rate of their backup, right? When virtualization, right, came out around 15 years ago, right, the major reaction was, well, we got a servers running inside each of those VM. We just put an agent inside your server VM, and the same way that how we protect physical server, and it would just work fine, right? Well, it did not work just fine. And then you figure out that when you cannot use the old approach, right? In fact, if you're trying to use the old approach by putting an agent inside the VM, and what you find is doesn't work well. Your SLA start goes down, your reliability goes down, you wonder why you are not getting a good recovery, or because you didn't get a good backup because you are using an older approach. And unfortunately, that was many organizations are doing on today. If you are using an old methodology trying to protect a new workload, like is a SaaS or a PaaS, you're going to have a limited resolve. And so if you looking at what the one thing could have dry data protection change, or for next year, right, is to improve the resolve, because you're gonna improve the method that you are using along the way. Well, the other question, this is again from the same research report, right? And the question was, what is enterprise backup mean to you? Again, long line mean choose all that apply. Short line mean if you are buying an okay, short line means the most important one. So if you are buying a new solution today, what would be the most important aspect to be considered? Right, the number one slot, it is support of cloud workload, like is infrastructure as a services, and SaaS, software as a services. And in fact, when you look at the short line on the screen, you notice a pretty significant stat between uh, one at 21% and number two at 13%. And after 30%, after the 13% is little bit of rounding here. Whatever legacy backup solution probably running in the data center works really great on those legacy workload. But what we traditionally see is a legacy backup solution as organization move or modernize their infrastructure, or even organization start adopt infrastructure as a services, software as a services, the cloud first strategy, those legacy approach for backup are not keeping up. And so it will make sense to me that, yeah, we got the rest of the stuff covered. We really just need to get the infrastructure as a services, the SaaS better protected. Because we embracing in production, we all know when you modernize protection, you gonna modernize uh, I mean, when you modernize your production environment, you're gonna modernize your protection. Again, if you think back 15 years, right, there were conversation going around and around where organizations say that we continue use the legacy backup solution for the physical box. However, for this virtualization workload, let's go ahead to get something new that really built for a virtualization platform, and that's how Veeam really came into the picture. Over time, we say that we can protect the rest of the environment too, and then Veeam to go into the rest of the environment. That's what put us in the market leadership for all those we have on today. It is pleased to see that organizations that are perhaps first using Veeam to protect their on-premise workloads like virtual machine, physical servers, a NAS file share, Oracle, SAP HANA, and then realize that Veeam can protect the rest of their environment as well. Their Amazon, uh, Azure, Google Cloud, their Office 365, and even Salesforce, and etc. Right, let's go on the next section. So the next thing we kind of want to look at is who is the actor that really involved this. Because if there is a lesson that we took away from 15 years ago, when we first come in resolving the problem around virtualization production protection, one of the key attributes we understood was that in many cases it was not the generic IT operation person that was at least starting the expectation along the way. In many cases, it was the virtualization admin. It was the workload owner and telling everyone that virtualization is different than whatever you have seen before. There need to be a bigger part of the equation as to how to defining the strategy and effectively uh, back up and restore them. Right, let's take a look at the SaaS first, the software as a services. Microsoft 365 protection strategy, right? One of the things we wanted to look at here was who defining the requirement, who defined the strategy for what need to be protected, and how long it need to be protected, right? Who have access to it. All of these are pretty foundation from an IT perspective, right? So you look at the left hand side, same question by the way. Overall, across the organization, it is a pretty fair mix, right? About little over half of the organization included both the Microsoft 365 administrator and the central IT team. And then you see pretty healthy blending here, and the data protection specialist, the cloud administrator, and the compliance and governance team. Now, one of the core design question with this particular research was asking different persona and then finding out do they agree, right? The one thing we found interesting was about out of multiple persona that responded to the question, we took uh, uh, to two that perhaps most diametrically opposed from the viewpoint, which is the workload order from the Microsoft 365, the SaaS admin, and the traditional backup administrator. And for the most part, almost everyone agree. You can see there very little point of deviation. They both think that compliance is there, but minority roles. They both think the cloud folks is there, the backup folks is there about half organization. Well, Microsoft 365 folks is there consistently. The real gap not notable here is that the backup team thinks that central IT team is involved more than necessary the M365 folks. Overall, this is a pretty healthy balance showing that both sides understand, right? That you need a lot of different folks on the table to make this good enough. Now, this is who defining the strategy requirement. Let's take a look at who actually clicking the a mouse, because this is actually telling us a more interesting story. Now, in this case, the question is who actually managing the backup within the 365 environment, and it's point out a couple of things over here. First thing, when this question was asked, they actually got asked in different way. Well, whether or not your organization was using backup as a services, so using one cloud protection, using one cloud protecting another. What we saw in the data is about 2-to-1 mix, right? Between the backup team that responded for backing up the rest of the environment and the M365 admin, their responsibility for their particular workload a little less, about 2-to-1 ratio. By the way, that little less than 2-to-1 ratio is consistent. So whether or not your organization using a BaaS or not, when backup as a services is involved, the and then the BaaS persona are responsible for about 1 and 4. Right right on the right side, right on the right hand side, the gap that you see in both case, Microsoft 365 administrator are pretty flat on the expectation, right? But over the BaaS team, the backup teams think that the BaaS folks are involved more than the application owner. What they basically say is that you outsource the management of backup to a BaaS or DRaaS provider, and you can tell because they have seamless experience, right? So this is a healthy gap over here. Maybe a challenges for some of the organization is the 365 folks thinks that the backup team is doing the backup. It's about the half at 54%, whereas the backup team actually think that they are only backing up their own environment about 40% at time. This might be a situation for under protection where the SaaS team think that the backup team is doing it, and at the same time the backup team thinks that the SaaS team is doing it, and you know what, actually no one is doing it. So one of the main takeaway here is that we have real responsibility as a backup expert. We need to work together with each of the teams, whether from the SaaS, from BaaS, from the IaaS team, from PaaS, and understand the the real reality gap, right, that exists within backup and recovery, and what we should be expecting from this solution. So thinking what can we do in 2023 to help ensure some of these gaps are filled and make sure that we are meeting compliance requirement and our goals. So now we kind of know who should be driving the boat. Let's go and take a look on the M365 backup method, right? So when organization were asked what kind of method they are using with M365 backup, in this case, third-party production or backup as a services dominate nearly 78%, right? It was that many years ago, this number was in the low double digit, and most people were saying we just use recycle bin, right? And what you found was the built-in utility actually isn't sufficient for a lot of scenario. Well, it's good to see that on today, only 3% misunderstand that cloud is resilient. But in fact, we still require backup. And only 4% think that the built-in recycle bin is enough. All right, it also looks good that only 4% do not currently back up Microsoft 365, but they are start looking for a solution. And then we've seen there are 43% utilize the enhanced services of Microsoft 365 that come with E3 or an E5 license. Typically, typical example like the legal hold, and yet that is not replacement for backup. Just bear in mind. But this become really interesting when we start looking at reason to back up Microsoft 365. When organization being asked why, why would you back up Microsoft 365? Well, no surprise here. The same reason you back up Microsoft 365 is actually the same reason why you back up the other infrastructure or environment. Cybersecurity attacks always stay at the top from both the SaaS admin and from the backup admin. And then compliance or retention is also at the top of mind of everyone. Stay in the number two spot along the way. And when we better build in function, and then we better build in a function, right? And restore capability kind of round up the top three over here. And you can see the rest of the list is the same reason why you back up the rest of the environment. Okay, so when we talk to the infrastructure as a services and the platform as a services team, around that same question on the left, that who defining the strategy, and on the right, who clicking the mouse. This seems surprisingly similar, right? Ultimately, we seeing that the IaaS, the PaaS, and the SaaS are as workload transforming into those kind of service platform, right? It really be the owner of that infrastructure or the owner of those workload, right? Sort of taking the char the charges, right? So they kind of in the front line there. So to try to get that transformation. But now that we reach that inflection point, more our workload live in the cloud. Now we really looking at cloud as how could we reach the level of optimization and confidence level. And that where expert from data protection, expert from the security and operation and automation, well, getting the scripting guy involved. All right, the time is really now to bring those source of skill set in. In general, who manage the backup, who is your directly responsible individual. I was personally amazed to see the backup team is being so high, even for infrastructure, because cloud architecture engineer, admin, right, admin tend to have much heavier hand in the infrastructure than a SaaS admin would. Probably there is a certain level of like, okay, I only look at what in front off the camera, but now what behind the camera in SaaS? But on the cloud side, we really need to know that really need to know that involved, right? I'm actually feeling encouraged to see the backup team being so heavily contributed over here. Again, I think we have real responsibility to make sure that we are leading with the best practice, leading with the policy-based approach. But keep in mind, the question really asks who responsible, who is the primary responsible person. That doesn't mean that the cloud team don't have a tremendous touch point throughout the process, right? Whether that then being managing the storage, managing the network, right? During recovery even, so there is a lot of people actually involved on the table. Again, what we've really seen is that there is a huge gland that all 3 points of these are essential, right? So you got the workload owner who understand their application that is either running natively with say uh, platform as a services over file or platform as a services over databases, or with those Windows or Linux instances that run of infrastructure as a services. And then we got the backup team that understand what is required from the retention perspective, compliance and regularity, and etc. And then lastly, cloud as a framework. You got the cloud expert in understand the complexities of infrastructure management within the cloud. So this is gonna define the who, right? Now starting get get more on the how. I think this is where things getting a little bit interesting, because when we look at the cloud, it is important to think about cloud as both production and protection. And so we spend some time looking at the landscape on how cloud is being managed and production. Let's look at it from the protection perspective, right? In this chart, in this chart, we we look at what percentage of organization is using the cloud as part of their data protection strategy or not, right? Those using on-premise tools, all right, the on the blue color that you can see here, right? On the blue color that you can see here, are 40% back in 2020, down to 34%, and then down to 33% in 2022, and would expected down to 19% in this year, and again 20% in coming next year. But you take a look at the organization that bracing cloud as part of their data protection strategy, including both backup as a services. So more on a managed services turnkey outcome, right? As well as simply grabbing the hyperscale storage tier as part of your self-service data protection. So we get from 60% to 66%, 67% to 81%, and 79%. Basically, in summary, over this 5 years curve, at the beginning of the curve, 3 out of 5 each organization start backup using the cloud services as part of their solution. And by 2024, 4 out of 5 organization is gonna leverage cloud services as part of their data protection strategy, right? And with the BaaS, the DRaaS cloud storage journey, the organization were asked, right? how is your journey of leveraging cloud backup storage or services? And I think these are two story get told, right? First and foremost, today, about 2 out of 5 organization, around 42%, they are leveraging cloud storage. So that hyperscale object storage, right, from Amazon, Azure, a Google Cloud, or a dedicated provider, more like a Wasabi type of scenario, right? And then about 3 out of 5 organization leveraging backup as a services, managed service solution. And the main thing you should think about here is when you adding cloud storage to your data protection solution, you are you still the smartest guy in the room, right? Because you simply managing storage as a layer, at, as opposed to you bring in a managed service solution such as a backup as a services. Now you got others dedicated smart human beside you, and then they will driving them all. Now this is this is start that exists today. This is the statistic that start to exist on today. Well, this is perhaps maybe the more interesting story to be say. Only about 30% of respondents started with only one, either cloud storage or managed backup services, and they stay with what they got. While 70% switch one side to the others, right? And in fact, it's worth knowing the 48% were they started with simply adding a cloud storage uh, tier, and then say, wait, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room, right? I want to outsource to the expertise as well as the capacity. And so they embrace the managed backup services as opposed to the 22%. They started with managed services, but actually I think I can run my own shop, right? So when you look at managed services, understand that a lot of value you actually unlocking is not because of the services, it's not because of the provide of the capacity, is it is because what else should get with the monitoring and the expertise that often come with this kind of value, right? Right. When considering your organization business continuity and disaster recovery, right, strategy. Okay, so is your secondary data stored within your own data center or at the cloud provider side? What do you anticipate doing in the next 2 years? Or maybe we rephrase the question: why backup as a services when you can do disaster recovery as a services, right? Right. Instead of just backing up to the cloud, bring the data right back when you need it. Again, look at the statistic over here at 5 years run. You can see that the self-managed own data center approach pretty flat, right? 30%, right? 20%, 28%, 34%, 32%, and 28%. Whereas what really being accelerated is come to the growth of the business continuity and disaster recovery industry. You can see a 23% and then 30%, 36%, 51%, and 53%. So what we are seeing here is DRaaS as compared to self-managed DR has risen in the last 3 years, right? notice the dramatic jump in the DRaaS aspiration, right? 2023 and 2024 compared to the past actual, right? Note that self-managed DR does not go away, even though there is a noted decline by 4 points from 2023 and 2024. In fact, if an organization have a secondary data center or an established practice of sending DR data to other production data center, well, this is a good investment to continue, right? Right. In the DPR research for 2022, organization actually ask, so what does modern data protection or innovative data protection actually mean? Those are long line which we've choose. Oh, so those long line we've choose all those apply, and again short line what most important to you. And when we kind of muted out here, right? Take a look at how many different way that modern basically should be uh, segment for cloud, right? So all the way the organization are looking for the attribute of the modern data protection solution, uh, the ability to use cloud infrastructure for DR, the ability to have a standardized practice between how you protect your on-premise workload and your infrastructure as a services workload and your SaaS workload. So the ability to move workload from one cloud to another. So I dev in Amazon, but I wanna do production in Microsoft Azure, or maybe I dev in a Google Cloud, but I wanna run my production in my on-premise environment or in a private cloud. So the flexibility, the mobility of multi-cloud is something that uh, is a hallmark of what modern data protection should be like. And also, by the way, ability to move workload from on-premise to cloud. So there are a lot of different way that kind of come together, and is that diversity of platform to be protected. And it's kind of gonna lead us into our last session of today, right? We provide modern data protection and a single platform for your cloud, virtual, physical workload, and enterprise application, and even SaaS, right? Is eliminating the need to settle for legacy backup solution. Well, I would say it is a complete solution for delivering data security, data recovery, and data freedom to your entire hybrid environment. And considering all this, it is no doubt that Veeam was named the 2022 Gartner Magic Quadrant leader for the sixth consecutive year, right? So we have protect over 400,000 customers worldwide, including 81% of the Fortune 500, right? All right, let's set up a few things that as organization are getting for 2023, right? We gonna grab a few others data point that hopefully set the groundworks for what else you should be thinking about and planning for in 2023, right? Certainly one of them we talking about cloud protection is the idea of long-term retention, right? For a lot of organization, people always think that because the cloud is natively durable, the requirement for backup are not as great from a failover perspective. And that's this part is true. What isn't true is if you have a 5-year retention mandate for your data, regardless of wherever you chosen to put that data on server or within services said that is actually one of the question organization will ask. How long are they retaining their data from cloud hosts? Only about half of them even holding their data for 1 year, much less, or more than 1 year along the way. So right, so when organization retain for more than 1 year, where they are where they putting it. So some folks like to put in different cloud, right? For example, Azure to Amazon or vice versa. I'm a fan of multi cloud, right? So the Veeam cloud service provider is really great for that. If you not gonna do that and you wanted use the same cloud, then it gonna tell you the best practice. Make sure you use separate credential for your repository than you do from your production environment. So the bad actor can't get in there, right? So certainly long-term retention is gonna be one area that you should be thinking about the long way. But similar to that, when you think about what is the most important as you plan for 2023 and cloud, right? You should be thinking about how did you make sure immutability is a huge part of your design goal. And to walk you through that, we're gonna bring out the data point from the ransomware research, right? In this case, the question was out of thousands of organizations surveyed in the ransomware report, they were asked, right, were the backup repository targeted as part of cyber attack? Yep, and the answer is two-thirds of the environment saying, yeah, that the repository is affected. Well, because if you don't have your backup anymore, you have no other choice other than pay the ransom. So as as a result, for majority of the organization, try to try to remove or disconnect their repository was the first step. Once the back actor, right, got into their environment, right? As you start thinking about how you're gonna plan for that, yeah, here some other data from this, right? So and I think this line up pretty nicely with the cloud protection trend readout that we're doing today, because when you look at it, you see that there's a lot different way an organization can can be offline or air gap or immutable. But for 3 out of 4 organization, their expectation is the cloud is going to be one of their immutable, air gap, offline or survivable tier. So the others one out there certainly on-prem disk or object storage. Well, by the way, V12 direct backup to object storage is really cool for that, right? As I love the fact that even in 2023, some folks are still thinking about tape as part of their survival repository plan, right? As you can see, there is no reason why you cannot architect the solution which is not immutable in each and every tier, right? Right? Active defenses will only block so much, and we have to assume our defenses will be rich as always, or that they already are. We believe that the best offense is a solid defense against ransomware. So everything we do is designed to help you to build a robust strategy for protecting your data. Well, we provide data security solution that can help you to ensure your data is safe and it is available when you need it, right? To help you do this, we provide a software driven platform that allow you to detect and monitor your data for threat, giving you added visibility to your exit defenses and ensure the data you restore isn't going to reintroduce a threat. And then we protect your data with immutable storage. And most importantly, we provide testing and verification because paying a ransom should not be more reliable than your backup. Well, it is important to recognize that the ransomware is a disaster, but it's not the only disaster the organization still have to face, right? Fire still can happen, a flood still happen along the way. So for all these kind of disaster that are going on, well, we think about how do you remediate from that. One of the key design criteria is that orchestration. With orchestration workflow, you have all the expertise scripted, and then you get the human out of the way, right? However, a bit of disappointment here as only 25% of the organization are leveraging orchestrator workflow for this, right? I'm thinking what we're going to see in orchestration version 6, part of the release in earlier, right? 2023. I think it will create more awareness for organization, right? Right. Everyone has been talking about Veeam V12, and again, I'm pleased to announce that V12 has already been GA on 14th of February on this year. If you wasn't aware, right? I have to say it is a very big release this year. There is a lot of new exciting features and enhancement in V12, and everyone please feel free to download the V12 and try it on your own. Also, right, we recommend everyone to join the Veeam community resource hub, right? Uh, is at the community.veeam.com. Well, as it is the best community across the industry. Personally, I feel, right? As we have people from the product strategy, from the product marketing, our system engineer organization, everyone is collaborate within the Vim community resource hub, right? So, well, again, all the report that we have been discussed on today, you can actually download them from here. So I will leave this screen for a couple of seconds so that everyone here can grab a screenshot like accordingly. Right, and lastly, before we end today's session, I am excited to announce that Vim on 2023 is coming soon. This is the Vim conference event of the year, and it will be held on May 20, 22nd to 24th in Miami. So please come join our event in the sunny Miami Beach or online from anywhere, right? You can register for in person now or keep checking back when online registration launched in earlier 2023. So feel free to scan the QR code for more details. And again, I will leave the screen on for a couple of seconds, right? Well, that's end my webinar session for today. Again, thank you everyone for joining today's session. And right, I hope it does help. Thank you.